I do have one that I love. I always listen for in the spring. I like it to be the first thing I hear in the spring.
Yeah.
And that's the black-throated green warbler. Because it's so happy sounding. It's like zee, zoo, 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 zee, you know, and you never, it's hard to see them. Warblers like to live way up in the tops of the trees and they flit constantly. But as soon as you hear that zee, zoo, 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 zee, you go, yes, spring is here.
Yeah, that's a great one.
It is. Have you ever seen those videos of, they call it a murmuration, starlings forming clouds, moving, changing clouds. We drove into a murmuration of tree swallows.
Oh, wow.
There must have been thousands. And it's like they totally engulfed the two cars. Wow. They were flying close to the ground in this huge cloud. And we very slowly moved forward and we were just amazed just watching these tree swallows passing in front of us. When I first began birding, we would use field guides. And there are many field guides, and every time we would go out, we'd go out with a shoulder bag with 15 pounds of field guides in it.
Wow.
Yeah, that was, you know.
That was an exercise, really, workout.
Acupuncture, help the shoulder. Now, when we see a bird and there's a question about it, instead of pulling out all these field guides, we pull out our phone.
Joan, I also want to ask, since you've had so much years of experience with birding, have you noticed any change in bird behavior? Especially, like we talked about change in technology, but there's been a change in climate as well.
Yeah.
So, in your experience, has there been anything different with the birds?
The hermit thrush used to sing loud and proudly, and it was so beautiful, all the other birds got jealous.
Oh, no.
And they exiled him to the distant forest. So now, when you hear the hermit thrush, it's still beautiful, but it always sounds very distant. So it is worth getting out there and listening for the hermit thrush, because it is such a beautiful song that it will touch your soul.
Hello, namaste, and welcome to The Rise. I'm your host, Vanessa Rai. Today we have an avid birder. Yes. We'll talk about that in the future. Avid birder, Joan Sherman with us. Welcome to the show, Joan.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining us today. And to start off, if you could tell our viewers a little bit about yourself to begin.
Oh, let's see. Not much to tell. I was born and raised in Michigan. I spent many years living in Pennsylvania, running a music agency. Got married and moved here to Massachusetts, where I work in the Apple store. But the one common thing about living in all three states is I've been very passionate about birds.
All right. So if you can tell us a little, what sparked your interest in that?
Well, in Michigan, I went to a small liberal arts college, and we had to take certain science classes. And among the science classes I had to take was either ornithology or entomology. In other words, birds or bugs. And it was kind of, I didn't care about either. But I decided to go with ornithology. And the first lesson was just a lecture in a classroom, you know, blah, blah, blah. Didn't mean anything to me. But the next class was a field trip out to the field to see the birds. And it was like early spring in Michigan, which is another way of saying there was this raging snowstorm. I mean, you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. But the moment we got off the bus, I heard the bark of a ringneck pheasant. And I was amazed.
Oh, wow.
I mean, who knew? There was this incredible blizzard, but there was this whole bird life out there that I knew nothing about. We saw, despite the weather, we saw over 20 species that day.
Oh, wow.
And after that, I never missed a field trip. In fact, we were only obligated to do one a week. I did every one they did that week. Days there weren't field trips, I was up before dawn in the morning and going out on my own. Just to see birds. It was like opening a door to a whole new world for me.
Wow. And you continued with it after that?
Yes, yes.
Great.
No matter what else I did in life, there was always birding.
Nice. And I almost made this mistake before, but could you tell me a little difference about bird watching versus birding?
Bird watching is, it's like a spectrum. On the one end is the casual looking out the window, oh, look at that nice bird. And the other end is that's bird watching, just, walking along and, oh, what nice birds. But birding is going out. You're not just looking out the window or walking down trails. You deliberately go out and look for them. Birding is learning how to identify them, both by sight and by sound. Birding is the passionate end, shall I say. Many people keep bird lists of how many birds they've seen in their lifetime, and some people, it goes into the thousands.
Oh, wow.
I'm more of a casual birder. But birding is something that has to be part of my life.
Oh, that's great. And for someone like me, a novice, or if anyone else out there wants to start in this path, what would you recommend to them?
Well, a lot of people come up to me and say, "Oh, I'm going to learn how to bird watch. I bought a book and a pair of binoculars." And it's kind of like, okay, when you see a bird, how do you know where in the book to look?
That's true.
It's not something you can just pick up, but we have a lot of resources. I would say go to massaudubon.org.
Okay.
Because they lead trips specifically for people who don't know birds and would like to learn.
Okay.
And the various sanctuaries, wildlife and bird sanctuaries in the area also have trips for people.
Oh, wow.
So I would look for these online.
All right.
And take that book, take that pair of binoculars.
Yes.
And join this group, because there will be a professional, somebody who really knows their stuff to guide you.
Oh, great. So, and is it like throughout the year, or is there specific seasons, or, for birding?
For birding, it's throughout the year.
Throughout the year.
You'll see different birds at different times of the season. Like our favorite is spring migration.
Oh, wow.
Ooh, that's when we go out the most, because we want to catch all those migrating birds as they go through. Mostly we love warblers.
Oh.
But in the fall, when they migrate back, all the warblers, we call them LBJs, little brown jobs, because they all look alike. Oh. And that's what you do. You're going, oh, there's another LBJ. Okay,
So they look different before they've migrated, and then they come back different?
Well, they look different throughout the season.
Oh. Wow.
There's breeding plumage where they're trying to attract a mate, so they look their best. And then there's off-breeding where they're much duller.
Oh.
So
so then that's when they're the LBJs. The breeding, or?
Well, the warblers are.
Oh, warblers.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
So.
I find many of the others are kind of little gray things, But so in learning birding, you often learn the different phases, and also the juveniles, the young ones, can look very different.
Oh, okay.
That's why it helps to go out with somebody who knows these things at first, till you start learning the ropes.
And are there like any? I guess for the beginners, it is a challenge to identify by themselves, but as like when you're much more established, is there still challenges or difficulties when you're going out birding?
Always. Oh, I should mention, there are now apps that also help you.
Oh,
I would still go out with somebody who knows what they're doing, but things like, I think it's Merlin ID, is a very good app, and that you're going, I don't know what that is. And you bring up the app and it asks you about the size, it asks you about the color, a little bit about the shape, and then it will give you suggestions, show you pictures of what it might be.
Wow.
So this is another nice guide when you're getting started.
Oh, that's definitely helpful. And for you yourself, did you ever have like a challenging experience or a story you want to tell us about?
Oh,
Share.
let me think. Oh gosh, I probably have several.
No worries. You can pick and choose if you want.
It's an art as well as a science,
That is true.
and you can be so sure. I remember my friend Marty. We were birding. We were birding as a group. I belonged to a group that birds, and Marty and I got into a knockdown, drag-out fight. I mean,
Oh, no.
oh yeah, oh, we heard the song, and I think I was going, oh no, that's a magnolia warbler. And he's going, oh no, it's not. It's a chestnut-sided warbler. It got almost to blows. It got so heated.
Oh,
And finally,
no.
somebody walked between us with his phone and held up a picture and said, I just saw it. I don't remember what it was.
Oh, it was
something
completely
totally different. And we were so sure.
Yeah, I guess that is hard.
Oh,
Yeah.
many times this has happened. And, my friend Jerry, he heard something, goes, oh, that's a field sparrow. I go, are you out of your mind? That is a cerulean warbler. And luckily I was able to find it, and it was a cerulean
Oh, that's good.
I wasn't
that
wrong
one
this
you
time.
wanted. Yeah. Yeah.
But I have a bunch of stories like
Oh,
that.
that's great.
It's even the most experienced people. I've been doing it 50-some years. I'm sure Marty was too, and Jerry. But
That's true. Maybe each bird has their own uniqueness too. I mean, like we as humans have, I mean, even though we're from the same group, we will still have our uniqueness. So maybe there's a little difference in their calls. I don't know.
Absolutely,
Or how they
there
look.
is.
So that's when you confuse, right? I guess.
absolutely
Right?
there is. You can listen to the call on your phone,
Yes.
and still. Well, I think that's close.
Yeah.
But most of the time they behave.
Oh,
Yeah, most of
that's
the
good.
time they behave, and you can go, oh yeah, that's a scarlet tanager, or that's a rose-breasted grosbeak.
All right.
And that's the beauty of birding. How many of these birds do you know?
I just know the generic names, I don't know the specific. Yeah.
They live all around us, all the time. And most people go throughout their lives without realizing what incredible beauty there is in front of them. We just went birding recently, and we were on the beach on Plum Island.
Yeah.
And we saw the most incredible array of shorebirds. And there were all these people walking past them, not even noticing them, including some endangered species like the piping plover. And I'm just like, just open your eyes, people. Just look. They are so beautiful. They are so wonderful. And most people don't even know that they exist.
Yeah, that is a little sad. But continuing, what is an ideal location to go birding?
Okay, what time of year are we going to talk about it?
We could right now, I guess, or
See?
maybe.
Well, like I say, for birders, our favorite time of year, we always look forward to this, is spring.
Spring. Yeah.
And that's when we always go on a trip somewhere to catch the migrating warblers. Because they migrate hundreds of miles, hundreds and hundreds of miles, and they'll go so long without eating and without stopping that when they see a spot of green, they just drop to fill up and continue.
This is it,
And so we look for those spots of green. A major one, and it's so much fun. You got to try this. Mount Auburn Cemetery in Cambridge, Watertown.
Yeah, that's very local, right?
Yes.
Here. Yeah.
In the spring, they are very, very good to birders. And they open early for us because there'll be lines of cars waiting for it to open. And there can be hundreds of people in Mount Auburn Cemetery on a morning looking for warblers. It is so much fun.
Wow.
Sometimes I just have to stop and watch the birders because they are so intent. And Audubon leads tours to Mount Auburn Cemetery for people who want to begin. And you'll see so much. You will see so much. It's probably the best time of year.
Best time.
Yeah.
Spring.
Spring migration.
Sounds.
And Mount Auburn Cemetery is in this whole big city is this little spot of green that the birds go right to.
Oh, yeah. That is, I guess, like a big problem nowadays with cities, you know, and
Yes.
people like cutting down trees, making new buildings. So the spots of greens are getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
But are there bird conservation organizations or that you think are
lots and
making an effort to
I mean, there are two of them that I really support. Mass Audubon does wonderful things in the state. And the other one that I always support is the Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology. Because I use them always. They have a website all about birds. I think it's allaboutbirds.org.
All about birds. All right, put them down.
During pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
During pandemic, in order to keep in touch with my coworkers, we didn't know how long this was going to go on. I started something called Bird of the Day.
Oh, wow.
And I started with birds that we commonly see around us and might even not even know are there. Things like the tufted titmouse and the song sparrow and birds like this. And I would post a picture of this bird, and then I would go to Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology has something called a website called All About Birds. And I would post what the All About Birds will show you pictures and identifiers. It will tell you what it sounds like. It will tell you all about it, nesting habits, feeding habits, where it's found, etc. It's a great way to learn about birds. So I would post the picture of the bird, and underneath that, the bird in All About Birds. Allaboutbirds.org.
Okay.
And this went on, so it got so popular that people kept contacting me saying, I want to be part of this group. You know, so I would add them to the text group. I don't remember how long it would got to be very long, and I would do Bird of the Day, and it had to stretch finally to Birds of North America.
Oh, wow.
And I threw in birds from around the world.
That's great.
But so Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology was a great source for me, and their website all about birds.
Oh, that's a wonderful story to bring a little bit of joy, or you know, a little bit of learning in the hard times of the pandemic. I mean, everyone was stuck inside, and that must have been great for everyone. I mean, a little. I feel like everyone did a little bit of baking and everything, and I think that was a good point where people probably started birding. Any stories about you or your loved ones who have begun birding after you did, or with their experience?
That was just it. People during the pandemic would say, I was just outside and I saw the bird from yesterday. I saw it. And they had never realized this bird had even existed.
Oh, yeah.
So many of the people from the pandemic are still doing it.
Wow.
And it's like their door has opened and their world has become wide. They've discovered a whole new world.
Oh, that's great. That's a wonderful story, Joan. Thank you for sharing that one with us.
Sure.
All right. I guess next we can. There's a lot of questions, but could you tell us what about your favorite bird? I'm sure there are many, but if you could share a little bit about your favorite bird.
My favorite bird is probably a bird I saw the last time I went birding. You know, you get excited when you see a new bird, or you see a bird you don't see often, and that at that moment is your favorite bird. I do have one that I love. I always listen for in the spring. I like it to be the first thing I hear in the spring. And that's the black-throated green warbler. Because it's so happy sounding. It's like zee, zoo, 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 zee, you know, and you never, it's hard to see them. Warblers like to live way up in the tops of the trees, and they flit constantly. But as soon as you hear that zee, zoo, 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 zee, you go, yes, spring is here.
That's a great one.
It is, it's just fun. But usually my favorite bird is the last really cool bird I saw. you constantly have favorites. You have new ones, you know. That first time I saw, what was it, the yellow-throated warbler. Oh my gosh, that's definitely my favorite bird because it was the first time I saw it.
Yeah. That's great. And I'm saying, I mean, this is more for the viewers. So birding, I guess it can be like an individual kind of thing where you go by yourself, or you go in groups, more of a social thing. If
Absolutely.
you can explain that a little bit more.
When I first moved to Massachusetts, I had married, and my husband had a house here, so I moved here, and I didn't know anyone except one person, whom I knew through folk dancing. I was also involved in the folk dance community. She decided to introduce me to other people, so she invited me and my husband Bob over for dinner one night, and so we could meet Erica and Morty, who were involved with folk dancing here. Well, we met, and I think we talked about folk dancing for 1 minute before we discovered we were all birders.
Oh.
And that we spent the whole evening talking about birding. And they invited me to come out with them and their group, the Hail Bird Group. And at the end of the first time we went birding, Marty, the leader of the group, says, "Would you like to join?" And I was like,
Wow.
"Yeah." And I've been with them for over 20 years, and it's become as much social. Of course, birding is the main, the priority. But I love these people, and I love spending time with these people.
So you become part of a community, which is great.
We have a community now.
Love that.
Yes.
So yeah, if you get started, you can be part of another community.
That's right.
Your
you
own.
might find a community too.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think Audubon is a community, and the Audubon trips.
Yeah.
And there are actually a number of birding groups around the state, and you could probably look for them online.
Oh wow. So going along with that, since you were saying how long it's been, where do you see your birding community or your birding experience in the next 5 years or 10 years? Do you think? Do you think it will change, or do you? Because like I feel like over time, probably with the apps and everything, that has changed too.
Well, actually, it has changed because when I first began birding, excuse me, when I first began birding, we would use field guides. And there are many field guides. And every time we would go out, we'd go out with a shoulder bag with 15 pounds of field guides in it. Yeah, that was,
that was an exercise, really, workout.
Acupuncture, to help the shoulder. Now, when we see a bird and there's a question about it, instead of pulling out all these field guides, we pull out our phone. Everybody, we reach back, pull out our phone from our back pocket. I have, I think, 5 field guides on my phone. So it weighs 6 ounces versus 15 pounds.
That's true.
And it has made life a whole lot better. And new apps are always coming out, like this Merlin ID. And there's apps, I think, is it Sound ID? I don't recall. But there are all kinds of apps about how to identify birds. There are apps that you can just, if you hear a bird song, you can hold your phone up and it will tell you what the song most likely is.
Oh, wow.
So it's becoming a lot more digitized with the use of apps, particularly making it easier, I think, if you're getting started.
Yeah, definitely. Because while you were saying, I was just thinking that I always hear bird sounds outside my house because we have tall trees, and especially during spring, because they all start building their nest and they're over there. So I can probably use the sound app just to identify.
Exactly. That will help you greatly.
Good. Yeah.
I like in spring just sitting in my yard and going, oh, there goes a yellow warbler.
See your experience. I wouldn't know. I would just be like,
oh, God, another pine warbler. This is the 10th one that I've heard today, And,
wow.
But, yeah. So if it's not really going to change. Unfortunately, we're all getting older, and the change is sad. We lost one of our members recently. But it's going to be more exciting for new people wanting to get into it because these apps will help them.
And so, do you have any other memorable experience you would want to share with us?
Wow, because there have been so many in a lifetime of birding. I could go on for another hour just with that.
We have the time.
I'll pick the most recent, memorable experience because I still see it in my mind. It was so amazing. My birding friends and I went to Plum Island, looking for shorebirds, mostly. And as we were driving, we were in two cars. I was in the second car. As we were driving along, we suddenly drove into, have you ever seen those videos of, they call it a murmuration, starlings forming clouds.
Oh, yes.
Moving, changing clouds. We drove into a murmuration of tree swallows.
Oh, wow.
There must have been thousands. And it's like they totally engulfed the two cars.
Wow.
They were flying close to the ground in this huge cloud. And we very slowly moved forward, and we were just amazed just watching these tree swallows passing in front of us. We didn't see it. I was in the second car, but the first car saw why. They were being chased by two peregrine falcons.
Oh, so they were trying to...
And they formed this ball because the falcons would be in danger if they flew into this ball. If they, tried to grab one, if they hit their wing against another, it might break the wing. So they can't do it. And so the tree swallows formed this ball, like a bait ball, like fish do.
Yeah.
And we happened to be driving through it.
Wow.
And we were that's all we could talk about the rest of the day.
No, that's great.
Yeah, when in birding, these experiences happen that you don't expect. And it just drives your passion.
It's great. Almost like, I would say it must... being part of the nature, when you see these things happening naturally and not something like man-made or anything like that.
Exactly.
It must be very calming for the soul too, I would say. I don't know.
There's
How
this
are your
whole
experiences?
world that has nothing to do with us. They don't care about us. They're doing their own thing. And you are desperately trying to peek inside. That's what you do when you're birding. And it's wonderful.
It's beautiful. So Joan, you mentioned some of the places, or you mentioned that you like going to places during the spring. Are there any specific spots or favorite spots that you'd like to share about?
Well, our group has a favorite spot. We go almost every year. Off the coast of Maine is a rock sticking out of the ocean called Monhegan Island. It's a very undeveloped rock, and mostly just lobstermen and artists live there year-round. But in the spring, as I mentioned, birds will look, if they've been flying for hundreds of miles over the ocean, they'll be looking for a spot of green. Monhegan Island is a spot of green.
Nice.
So it is a fabulous location for birding in the spring to catch the warblers, especially if they've been flying for hundreds of miles over the ocean. When they drop down, they often are so exhausted. I mean, warblers are hard to spot because they tend to be up in the top of the tree, flitting constantly. But very often, in a place like Monhegan Island, they'll have what's called a fallout, where they just fall to the ground. They're too exhausted to move. So you walk along and go, oh, how do you like that? That's a black-throated blue warbler, which you usually never see. Because they're just feeding. They're just trying to get their strength back. But the variety of birds on the island in the spring is fabulous. And I remember standing at a bush, one bush, for 1 hour. We got over 50 species.
Wow.
Over 50, just 1 hour at this one bush.
Oh, wow.
We kept thinking, time to leave. And then all of a sudden, a wave of birds would come into this bush. And we just, I'm not going anywhere. And up would come the binoculars. And the only ones in the spring on the island, other than artists and lobstermen, are birders. And it's fun. Again, it's a community. And at the end of the afternoon, we all end up at the Monhegan Brewery and just sit and talk birds.
Talk about birds. Nice. That's
It's a wonderful, it's a wonderful experience, and it's a wonderful, wonderful and gorgeous island.
Wow.
Worth visiting, even if you don't go for birding. But I would recommend going for birding.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that. All right. You mentioned great trips. So for beginners, if they want to take an expedition, birding expedition or trip, what are basic things they might want to bring with them to have a good experience?
Well, I always bring food for snacks.
Yes.
You're out there for hours. I'm sorry, I need snacks. But the very basics, I guess the most basic thing is a good pair of binoculars.
Okay.
I think most people think they can pick up the binoculars they use for football games or something, and that will do it, but it won't.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Binoculars for birding or bird watching require specific optics. And I would go online and Google something like binoculars for bird watching and reviews of binoculars for bird watching.
Yeah.
This is how I found my last pair of binoculars.
Okay.
Because they can run the gamut from, and it will cost a few $100s to a few thousand. But I would check out what's available, and even going to places like we have Hunt's Camera here. They have binoculars and get a knowledgeable person who can tell you what can be used for birding. Dick's Sporting Goods. They have binoculars, and a knowledgeable person can tell you what's good to be used for birding. Do some research.
Yes.
But that's the primary thing to take. It's not a bad idea to get a bird guide, because I often, when somebody says, I believe that's a blah, 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 I'll look it up in the book and see what the identifying marks are, and then I can confirm, oh yeah, okay, now I know. Probably the most common one nowadays is the David Sibley the Sibley Guide to Birds.
Okay.
He's the most popular bird guy. Yes. And those would be that, and some food for snacks.
Definitely, yes.
Would be probably the most important thing. I also wear a baseball cap to shade my eyes from the sun. Things like that. And looking for trips, as I say, start with massaudubon.org, because they also have like trips to things like South Shore. And maybe they have trips to Monhegan Island, who knows. But you can find these.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Joan, I also want to ask, since you have had so much years of experience with birding, have you noticed any change in bird behavior? Especially, like we talked about change in technology, but there's been a change in climate as well. So in your experience, has there been anything different with the bird?
Yeah, particularly as things warm up, as they've been doing, we know for a fact that many birds are moving north. For instance, the one experience I've had, right now, among the most common birds, right there, up there with house sparrows, is house finches. We see them everywhere all the time. But that was not always the case. And 40-some years ago, in Michigan, I remember the first time I heard a house finch, because we didn't have them yet. And I heard this, and I thought, what is that? I don't think I've ever heard this before. And the person I was with goes, oh, yeah, that's a house finch. They're moving up here now. And now they become, extremely common residents, year-round residents. And there are other birds. I can't think offhand what the might be, but we see a lot more migrants that should only be seen in Florida, for instance. There was one recently. There was a flamingo on Cape Cod.
Oh, wow. I didn't hear about that. Wow.
And he probably just got stuck in a storm or somehow got lost. But these things are happening more commonly. And in fact, on Facebook, there was a rare bird alert. And that's where I found out about the flamingo. And you can see many of these birds that aren't usually found in this area, and it will tell you where they are.
All these conversations of birding have been great. Do you feel that birding is like a healing experience?
Very much. I mean, of course, we've all experienced the pandemic. And, you know, getting out and watching this creature that doesn't care. It doesn't care. It doesn't care what's happening. Just watching this whole other world, especially in times of high stress. I find that getting out, it takes everything away. All I care about is, what bird is that? Oh, listen to that sound. Listen to that song. What is that? And suddenly the stress goes away. It is a wonderful stress reliever. And healing. And heals the heart when it is in high stress.
That is great.
So I would recommend it for anyone who's having a difficult time. Get out with those binoculars. Get out with those apps on your phone and see what you can find.
We heard a little bit about your favorite bird, but what about your favorite melody from a bird? Or which bird has the best melody?
I have a favorite.
You have?
I have a favorite. Thrushes have beautiful melodies, but the most beautiful is the hermit thrush, which you will only hear in the deep forest. And it's this beautiful flute-like call. It's just gorgeous. And it always sounds like it's very distant. I don't know why that is, but it always sounds like it's far away. And there's even a Native American tale about that.
Oh.
Yes. Apparently, the hermit thrush used to sing loud and proudly. And it was so beautiful, all the other birds got jealous.
Oh, no.
And they exiled him to the distant forest. So now, when you hear the hermit thrush, it's still beautiful, but it always sounds very distant. So it is worth getting out there and listening for the hermit thrush, because it is such a beautiful song that it will touch your soul.
It's beautiful.
Actually, I heard a story about this, and let me tell you how I found this story. I was emailing my rabbi one time, and he asked, will I see you on Saturday? And I kind of, a little bit embarrassed, kind of went, no, this Saturday I'm doing my other form of worship. I'm going out birding. And he sent me back right away this beautiful poem by Emily Dickinson about how her garden is her chapel and the bird song is her choir. It was about birding in nature as worship.
Do you think Emily Dickinson was an avid birder or a fellow birder?
I don't know. It's a good thing to find out, isn't it?
Yeah. Because
she certainly understood the beauty of nature and the beauty of birdsong, because she repeated it in her poems. So even if she wasn't an avid birder, she understood the point.
Yes. Great one. Which bird looks, or the best, or you think looks beautiful, the most beautiful?
The latest one I saw. Really, it's hard to say which is the most beautiful, because then you see another and go, oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. So the most beautiful, I don't know.
You see
they all are in their own way.
That is true.
And when I see a new one for the first time, like the yellow-throated warbler, which is in one of Bijay's videos. I think that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. But then when I see another bird for the first time, like the white-eyed vireo, oh my God, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. So it's a constant, it's constant new beauty.
Yeah.
Every time you see something new, it's like, oh my God, that's so beautiful. I'm so glad I saw it.
Yeah. So it's always like a fulfilling experience whenever you see a new one.
Oh, yeah. or even one you haven't seen for a while. Oh my gosh, look at that. I haven't seen the rose-breasted grosbeak for a while. And there it is. And it's so beautiful. Yeah, and again, these birds are all around.
Wow.
Just look for them because you will be glad you did.
Definitely. I'll be looking out now, from now on.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
All right. All right. I mean, with your years of experience in birding,
Yeah.
as an expert, how have you been helping newcomers? I guess like Bijay.
I hate to be called an expert, but I try to help things like Bijay will send me pictures occasionally of birds that he's seen and ask me what it is. I also have a lot of friends who send me texts of bird song that they heard. What is this? But like I say, I do my best. I am not an in fact, even the experts aren't always experts.
That's true.
I remember birding in Mount Auburn Cemetery once, and my friend Marty and I were walking ahead of the others, and we heard an expert. She was leading an Audubon group, and she was saying that this was, I think she said it was a Philadelphia vireo, something exciting in any case. She was pointing, and yeah, up there's a Philadelphia vireo. And Marty and I thought, we got to see this. And we went running. And as soon as we got there, it was like synchronized swimming, we did this all at the same time. Up came the binoculars, we looked, down came in the binoculars, we turned, we looked at the expert and said, pine warbler. She literally turned red. Now, she was an expert. She was very good. She was very good, but even the very good can make mistakes.
That is true.
And you know what? The sky didn't fall. Somebody else was able to say, oh, no, that's a pine warbler, and everything went on.
Yeah.
Life continued.
Meanwhile, the bird itself didn't care.
Yeah. Doing his thing.
Yeah. So great experiences, and
yeah,
obviously for new people wanting to join, there's plenty of resources.
Yeah.
We have all the links you mentioned. We're gonna put it down in the description.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I guess lastly, to end with, any message for the viewers? It could be about birding, it could be about life, anything that you would want to express to them, maybe to start birding or,
Well, that would be it. Open your eyes. Get outside. And every time I go for a walk, I see people with ear pods. I never wear ear pods because I'm missing a whole world of birdsong. There is a whole world out there that you don't even know anything about. And I challenge you to get out there and learn it. Discover the sounds, discover the sights, because you will be amazed. They are fabulous.
It's a great message. Love it. Well, thank you for joining us today, Joan.
Certainly.
Thank you so much for your lovely stories. I'm sure we all enjoyed it. I enjoyed it very much. Definitely gonna start with the apps, trying to bird a little now, do some birding. But yeah, thank you all for joining us. If you love our talk show, please like, share, subscribe, and comment below. Thank you again, and namaste. Again, thank you so much for joining us. And this is a little gift from our team.
Oh my gosh,
for being here with us today and taking a little time to teach us about birding.
Oh,
thank you so much, Joan.
You're very welcome.